Stockholm, 55 minutes into the World Cup final. A high, looping ball drops from a pale, Swedish sky into the penalty area. A 17-year-old boy in a strange blue shirt cushions it perfectly on his chest. As a defender lunges in, the boy flicks the ball over the man's head with a touch so delicate it seems to hang in the air. Before the ball can meet the grass, he connects with a pure, thunderous volley. For a single heartbeat, 49,000 people in the Råsunda Stadium go completely silent. Then, the roar hits like a wave from the sea. The boy is Edson Arantes do Nascimento. The world will come to know him as Pele. This is June 29, 1958, and this is the moment football finds its first global monarch. He is 17 years and 249 days old, the youngest player ever to feature in a World Cup final, and now the youngest to score in one. But this goal, this night, is about more than just one boy's genius. It is about a nation's redemption. Brazil, a country that lives and breathes football, has never won its greatest prize. They arrived in Sweden carrying the ghost of a national tragedy, a wound so deep it had its own name, the Maracanazo. To understand 1958, you must understand 1950. Brazil, hosting the World Cup, needed only a draw in the final match against Uruguay to become champions. In their temple of football, the Maracanazo, 200,000 people gathered for a coronation. Newspapers printed victory editions before kickoff. The party was ready. And then, silence. Uruguay won, 2-1. The stadium wept. The country went into mourning. That defeat became a collective trauma. The story goes that a 9-year-old Pele found his father crying beside the radio. He made a promise that day. "Don't worry," he said, "one day I'll win it for you." It was a child's impossible wish, spoken into a house thick with sorrow. 8 years later, he walked under the grass in Sweden to keep it. The Brazil that arrived in Sweden was different. They were scarred, but they were prepared. Coach Vicente Feola had built a team of staggering talent, but also of tactical discipline. They played a daring 4-2-4 formation, a shape that felt revolutionary. It was built around a spine of leaders. In midfield sat Didi, the team's brain, a player of supreme elegance and intelligence. Many journalists of the era considered him the tournament's finest player. His job was to dictate the tempo, to bring calm to the chaos. He was the conductor of the orchestra. And what an orchestra it was. On the right wing, there was Garrincha, the little bird, a force of nature with bent legs who played with the joyful chaos of a street game. On the left, Mario Zagallo was a new kind of player. He was an attacker who defended, diligently tracking back when Brazil lost the ball. His hard work allowed the 4-2-4 to morph into a solid 4-3-3, a balance of flair and pragmatism that other teams could not solve. This was not just about individual brilliance, it was a system designed to unleash it. And where was Pele in all of this? He started the tournament on the bench. A knee injury from a pre-tournament friendly kept him out of Brazil's first 2 matches. He was an uncapped teenager, a raw talent whose place was far from guaranteed. He watched, he waited. His World Cup finally began in the third group game against a formidable Soviet Union side. He was brought in alongside Garrincha, and the effect was electric. The knockout stages became Pele's personal showcase. In the quarterfinal, Brazil faced a rugged, defensive Wales team. The game was deadlocked, a physical, frustrating affair. Then, in the 66th minute, the 17-year-old received the ball with his back to goal, surrounded by defenders. In one fluid movement, he controlled it, swiveled, and poked a shot past the despairing dive of goalkeeper Jack Kelsey. It was the only goal of the game. It was his first ever World Cup goal, a moment of composure that belied his age. Brazil was through. Next came France, a brilliant attacking side led by the tournament's top scorer, Just Fontaine, who would finish with a still unbeaten record of 13 goals. It was billed as an epic clash. For the first half, it was. Then in the second, Pele took over. He scored a hat trick in just 23 minutes, a poacher's finish, a powerful volley, a strike on the rebound. It was a brutal, breathtaking explosion of talent. Brazil won, 5-2. The world, which had known him as a promising youngster just days before, now saw a phenomenon. The boy was no longer a whisper. He was the noise. And so to the final, against the hosts, Sweden. There was an immediate complication. Sweden wore yellow, Brazil's iconic color. A draw was held, and Brazil lost. They had to wear their change strip. The problem was they hadn't brought one. The team staff scrambled, buying a set of plain blue shirts from a local Stockholm shop and hastily sewing on improvised crests. They would face their destiny not as the Canaries in yellow, but as strangers in blue. The whistle blew. Just 4 minutes in, the stadium erupted. The Swedish captain, Nils Lidholm, weaved through the Brazilian defense and slid the ball home. 1-0 to the hosts. The ghosts of 1950 stirred. But this was a new Brazil. Didi, the captain on the field, calmly picked the ball from his own net. He walked slowly, deliberately, back to the center circle, tucking the ball under his arm. He looked at his teammates, panic beginning to creep into their eyes, and said, "Calm down. We are still the better team. Let's just play our football." His composure was a balm. Brazil listened. They responded almost instantly. Just 5 minutes later, Garrincha exploded down the right flank, a blur of unpredictable movement, and drilled a low cross into the box. The powerful striker Vavá, throwing himself forward, crashed it into the net. 1-1. The Brazilian rhythm returned. Then, just after the half-hour mark, it was the same combination. Garrincha tormenting the Swedish left-back, another hard cross, and Vavá again arriving with perfect timing to score. 2-1 to Brazil. The Swedish storm had been weathered, and now the blue tide was rising, which brought the game to the 55th minute, to the high, looping ball, to the chest, the flick, the volley. It was a goal of such audacious imagination and perfect execution that it felt like it had been dreamed into existence. It was art, composed in 3 touches. Swedish defender Sigge Parling, who was on the pitch that day, would later confess, "After the 5th goal, I'll be honest, I felt like applauding." He was talking about Pele's second, but the sentiment began here, with this first strike of impossible beauty. Now Brazil was flowing. At 68 minutes, the tireless Zagallo got his reward, ghosting in to score a 4th. Sweden, to their immense credit, never gave up. Agnes Simonsson pulled a goal back with 10 minutes to play, giving the home fans one last moment to cheer. But the final word belonged to the boy king. In the 90th minute, a cross came in from the left. Pele rose, hanging in the air, and guided a perfect looping header into the far corner of the net. 5-2. The statement was complete. The crown was secure. At the final whistle, the facade of the calm, nerveless prodigy finally cracked. Pele collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. The emotion of the journey, the weight of the promise, it all came pouring out. His teammates lifted him onto their shoulders. The enduring photograph is of him weeping into the chest of the great goalkeeper, Gilmar, a boy overwhelmed by the scale of his own achievement. A moment later, Captain Hilderaldo Bellini was handed the Jules Rimet trophy. On impulse, he lifted it high above his head so photographers could get a better view. It was a spontaneous gesture that became the emblem of victory, a tradition followed by every captain since. Why do we still talk about this night? Because it was the moment a nation healed itself through sport. It was the moment the world was introduced to O Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game, played with a rhythm and joy that felt brand new. And it was the night a 17-year-old boy, playing in a borrowed blue shirt, fulfilled a promise made to his father and became forever football's king. On that field in Stockholm, the game found its future. It has never been the same. If this night reminds you why you fell in love with football, subscribe to Inkpitch for more of the game's greatest stories. We believe these moments are worth preserving, hand-drawn, and told with the respect they deserve. Drop a like if Pele's story moved you, and join us for the next chapter.